Welcome to Taking Stock. I'm Amanda Lang. This week we are in conversation with the Premier of Manitoba, Wab Kinew, talking about an economy that is showing surprising strength and capturing growth for its Indigenous peoples, plus federal-provincial relations. That's all ahead. But first, who is the 25th Premier of Manitoba? Here's what you need to know. Wab Kinew is the first Premier of the province to be a member of Canada's First Nations, though not the first Indigenous Premier. That was John Norquay, a member of the Métis community, who was Premier back in 1878. But Kinew might be the coolest Premier, often described as a former rap artist. He is that, having been part of 2 rap bands. But Kinew's no slouch. He is also a successful broadcaster, university administrator, and the author of several books. The Premier is also young, sworn in at 41 years of age, though not the youngest by far, an honor that goes to New Brunswick's Brian Gallant, who was 32 years old. He governs a province with a population of 1.3 million people, the vast majority of whom live in one city, Winnipeg. But at 72% of the total, that is still below the national average. Manitoba's economy is one of the fastest growing recently, up 1.4% last year. It lags only Alberta and PEI and beats the national average of 1.1%. Unemployment in the province is also lower than the national number at 4.8% compared to a Canada-wide total of 5.4%. Kinew's NDP government won a majority with a promise to address healthcare and housing in the province. Those promises are now shaping the new government's agenda. When we talked recently, I began by asking the Premier how his election promises are translating into reality.
We are focused on following through on our campaign commitments, and healthcare, I think, was one of the biggest focuses. We talked about it every day during the campaign, and now in government, we're really trying to invest in the staffing, first and foremost, so that we can make other moves later on to improve emergency care, primary care, cancer care here in Manitoba. And really, we do view these as foundational to the overall health of our economy. And then, of course, there's all the affordability measures that we talked about. We've cut the provincial fuel tax to save consumers and businesses money. But when you ask about, what is the itinerary looking like these days, I'd say that economic development opportunities are occupying a lot of our time these days. We inherited a deficit from the previous government that we're trying to wrangle with. Of course, we're going to look at a balanced approach of, looking at the expenditures and the revenues, but we really have to grow the economy here in Manitoba, and I think we have some good opportunities to do so, and so we're spending a lot of time on that. And
I must say, as somebody who grew up in Manitoba, it was always a place that was pretty steady, didn't boom much, didn't bust much either. But you've been booming. I mean, relative to other provinces, Manitoba's been a place of growth in recent years. What's the kind of your focus on keeping that going? How do you keep the growth alive?
Well, first and foremost, we have a really well-diversified economy. That is our strength, and that's how we've been able to continue moving forward in terms of GDP growth. So we got to be good stewards of that strong, diversified economy that we already have. But then we also have a really exciting emerging opportunity around zero-emission, low-carbon, clean energy industries here. We really have the entire potential supply chain here in Manitoba, from critical minerals, potential secondary processing. We'd love to see more manufacturing of various components. We have NFI Group, who are the largest bus manufacturer in North America. So we've got some advanced manufacturing here. And then, of course, with the Port of Churchill, people don't always appreciate this, but we are a maritime province. We have the ability to export from Manitoba. So I think when we talk about an economic development plan for our province, we want to preserve that strong, diversified economy that we already have, while being able to make good on this potential of the entire supply chain for a zero-emission future, being a really, really important opportunity for Manitoba.
So we'll pull on a few of those threads. In terms of economic development, you are a beneficiary of immigration, as are other provinces. Does that help fuel some of the labor requirements you have? And I guess I'll ask you in tandem with that, is that enough to offset some of the affordability issues that are coming with immigration?
You know, we hear from large employers, small and medium enterprise in Manitoba all the time that labor force and labor shortages continue to be an issue. And we hear that a lot from some of the manufacturing centers, whether that's in Winnipeg or in the Pembina Valley in southern Manitoba or other regions. So immigration is very important to allowing our economy to continue to grow. At the same time, we do know that housing is an issue, and while it is very possible for you to buy a home here in Winnipeg and in other parts of Manitoba where that may be out of reach in other parts of the country, we know that being able to preserve that affordability advantage isn't going to happen by accident. So we're thinking carefully about the right policy steps we can take at the provincial level to ensure that there's the right housing supply, there's the right services, there's the right GDP growth writ large to ensure that as we bring in newer Canadians to Manitoba, that we're going to continue to increase prosperity for everybody.
And then, I mean, you mentioned the deficit. This is, of course, a tension federally and in every province, because on the one hand, you're talking about things that require spending, and on the other hand, there is this need for balance. Manitoba's deficit isn't massive, but it's there, and frankly, Manitobans have gotten used to deficits in the last 20 years. How do you kind of get out of that mindset?
Well, it's a personal priority that we move to balance on the budget here in the province. Again, we have to do so to set the right economic conditions here in the province. And just on the affordability side for the average consumer, unless we have a balanced budget in the foreseeable future here in Manitoba, we're always going to be coming back asking for more. And that's not right given the current affordability challenge that people are living through. So we got to be fiscally responsible, but we also have to be balanced. So we got to do the hard work, roll up our sleeves behind the scenes, looking at the revenue, looking at the expenditures. But then again, that's why the economic development piece is so important, because my long-term goal, in addition to balancing the books, is I would like to see Manitoba move from being a have-not province to being a have province. I would like us to stop being an equalization province in the future, and that's going to only happen if we make the right economic development plays today so that future generations can benefit from a growing economy.
One place, of course, that will be a focus as you do pursue those economic development agenda is the energy side. Manitoba, of course, one of the provinces that has clean energy, abundant clean energy. However, there are some concerns that your grid capacity might not be there to attract the businesses you want to attract. This is kind of recent information. Are you worried about that, and what work needs to be done to make sure you have the energy underpinnings for proper growth?
Well, Manitoba has been smart. Over the past 50 years, we've put the down payment on a low-carbon energy future. We have that low-carbon grid today, and now we need to be smart for the next phase of building out on that economic potential, which, to your point, is about making sure that when we have existing businesses here looking to grow or new opportunities for foreign investment, that we've got the ability to supply the power for those industries. Right now, this is something we're looking at very seriously. I think with the right mix of policy choices and investment decisions in the near future, we're going to be able to ensure that we continue to look after existing employers while also powering future opportunities. And then as we get into more detail about laying that future framework for the entire supply chain of a zero-emission manufacturing hub here in Manitoba, I think that's where some of these conversations, which right now are talking about the existing grid capacity, all of a sudden become conversations about how are we going to build a hydrogen industry here in the province? How can we look at adding more capacity to the grid in a way that continues to create employment here in Manitoba? So I think within all of these immediate term challenges that we're thinking through, on the other side of them, there are tons of opportunities for future growth.
Still ahead, tackling Manitoba's Indigenous economic gap with its Indigenous Premier. Stay with us.